Hey guys, welcome back to Ace Recaps. Today I'm going to be explaining a 2018 Hindi comedy horror film titled, Stree. The movie begins as we take a stroll through the streets of a town named Chanderi. We see that every house in the town has, "Oh Stree, come tomorrow" written in red ink on its walls. The streets are empty as it looks like the people are hiding from some strange entity. A man is seen peeing on the street. Suddenly a woman calls out to him. He freaks out and tries to run away, but unfortunately, no man can ignore the call of Stree. He turns around, his eyes glow, and he's dragged away by the evil spirit. The movie is based on a ridiculous true phenomenon. The next morning, we watch as Vicky jogs through the streets of the town. He doesn't believe in Stree and makes fun of the man painting the slogans on the walls. The man claims that this is no ordinary ink as it has crushed bones of a bat mixed with the pee of a white crow. This blesses the house and keeps the evil spirit from entering people's homes. Vicky seems to be a very talented tailor and women wait outside his shop every morning to get their clothes stitched by him. He can accurately guess the measurements of a woman just by looking at her. His father thinks that he's been blessed by the gods, but Vicky wants to do more with his life than just stitch clothes. He goes to the roof and lights a smoke. He's suddenly interrupted by a beautiful woman. She asks him to stitch her dress and he agrees to do it in 2 days. She claims to be from another town and only visits here during the 3-day festival. They met last year at the festival too and he seems to be in love with her. They decide to meet that night and she goes away. Vicky then meets his 2 best friends Bittu and Jana and tells them about the pretty girl. Bittu seems jealous of him and Jana is happy for his friend. That night at the festival, Vicky tells his friends to carry on, and he waits outside the temple to meet the pretty girl. He acts very nervous around her and she seems to enjoy his company. He asks for her phone number, but she says she doesn't have a phone and all he needs to do is think about her and she'll be there. She then hands him a letter and tells him to read it the next morning. In the next scene we watch as Bittu and Jana walk by an empty road as they are heading to a party. On the walk they are interrupted by Rudra. He tells them that Stree only appears during the 3 days of the festival and warns them that men should not walk alone at night as Stree will abduct them naked and leave only their clothes. He tells them that if they ever hear the calling of Stree, whatever happens they should never turn back, but no man has ever been able to resist her calling. While they continue on their walk, they spot something in the forest, freak out and run away. As they reach the party they decide not to tell Vicky about the incident as he'd just make fun of them. At the party, the men seem to have called a beautiful dancer and all of them are seen having the time of their life dancing with her. In between, Vicky decides to go out and pee. He sees the slogan and ruins it since he doesn't believe in Stree. The power suddenly goes out in the house, and one of the men who was about to hook up, gets dragged out the window by Stree. Everyone rushes to the room and finds his clothes outside. They figure out that someone peed on the ink and start blaming Vicky. He begs for their forgiveness and they decide to go looking for their friend, but chicken out at the last second. The next morning, Vicky is excited to read the letter given to him by the pretty girl. He shows the letter to his friends and it looks like she's requested for some weird items. Vicky, blinded by love, doesn't bother and goes looking for the items. He is then seen buying some brandy, half-kilogram mutton and he goes looking for the fur of a white cat, thornapple fruit and the tail of a lizard. That night is the 2nd day of the festival. At his shop Bittu overhears a couple speak and realizes that the items requested by the girl are used in witchcraft. He tries to contact Vicky, but he just ends up cutting the call. The pretty girl suddenly appears again outside the temple. She takes the items and refuses to enter the temple. She then asks Vicky to join her in a secret spot where nobody will disturb them. They are seen sharing a romantic moment on the auto rickshaw ride to the spot. Bittu and Jana are worried for their friend and keep trying to reach him, but Vicky just keeps cutting their call. They go around the town looking for him, but in vain. The pretty girl takes Vicky to the middle of the forest and they sit around a fire. She is seen seducing him and just as they are about to kiss, she disappears and the fire gets extinguished. Vicky seems to be frightened and goes looking for her in the forest but doesn't find her. On his journey he spots an abandoned palace up the hill, but doesn't think much of it. Bittu and Jana get into an argument and decide to go their separate ways. As Jana walks home alone, the power goes off. He seems shaken up and tries to rush home. Unfortunately, Stree calls out to him. He tries to ignore her and runs away. But on the third call, he turns around. His eyes glow and he smiles. He suddenly snaps out of it and realizes that her feet aren't touching the ground. He runs away, but Stree is way too fast. She catches up to him and drags him away, leaving behind his clothes. His mother is seen crying over her missing son and she blames his friends for it. Bittu takes Vicky aside and convinces him that the pretty girl he's been seeing is a witch and she herself might be Stree. The next morning the whole town is seen protesting for the loss of the boys. Vicky uses his skills, and stitches the dress that the girl had asked for. He takes it to the roof and thinks of her. She suddenly appears out of nowhere. He gives her the dress and tries to ask her to set his friend free. The whole town suddenly turns dark and she turns into Stree, but this just turned out to be him hallucinating. Still frightened by the ordeal, he runs over to another man and asks him if he sees her. But she's disappeared again. That night the two friends decide to approach Rudra, who's an expert in the matter. He finds a book in his library and they read it out. Many years ago, there was a very beautiful woman. Everybody in the town wanted to marry her for her looks. But only one man fell in love with her for her soul. On the day of their marriage, the jealous men of the village end up killing the both of them. From that day onwards, every year during the 3 days of the festival, she abducts men hoping to find her long-lost love. As they continue reading on how she could be stopped, they realize that the pages of the book are missing. Vicky spots a picture of a palace and recognizes it from the forest the other day. The three men decide to go check it out to help save their friend Jana. They reach the abandoned palace on a bike. They are all terrified but decide to enter anyway. As they enter they realize that the place is a little too big, so they decide to split up and look for Jana. While Rudra goes looking for him, he spots Stree, freaks out and runs straight out. Bittu on the other hand has a jump scare when a snake falls on him. He runs out looking for the other guys but spots Stree on the roof. He also chickens out and flees the palace and meets Rudra outside. Vicky on the other hand is determined to find his friend. So he doesn't stop looking. He reaches a creepy hallway and comes across statues. Suddenly he is called out by Stree. He tries to ignore her calls but on the third call, he turns around. Stree comes whooshing in about to abduct him, but stops and stares into his eyes. She turns into her original form. But suddenly she is attacked by the pretty girl from earlier. She throws holy powder on Stree, and the evil spirit flees. Vicky introduces her to his friends outside, and turns out she's lost her brother too. That's why she studied magic, hypnosis, tantric and even spells from the Red Book. She's been coming to the town for the past 3 years during the festival to try and stop Stree from abducting more people. But she isn't strong enough to do so. Suddenly they hear a noise, and when they turn around they spot Jana who stands naked. They take him back to the town and his mother seems very happy to have him back. But Jana acts very weird and says that he needs to sleep. That night, while everyone's asleep, Jana randomly wakes up and is seen walking around the town. The next morning over 20 women are seen crying over the missing men in their house. It looks like someone went around the village and erased the ink on everybody's walls. Bittu runs over to Jana's house and figures out that he was the one who erased the ink. Jana then starts attacking him and everyone in the family as he still seems to be under the spell of Stree. Just as he's about to attack Vicky, the pretty girl puts a spell on him and then captures him. They tie him up and the mother is seen praying for him. The friends are seen trying to come up with a way to beat Stree so that all the men can return back home. As the pages of the book are missing they decide to go meet the author himself. The author tells them that only one man can stop the evil spirit. The man of wheatish color, long nose and treats himself like a king. Born in the arms of the oak tree. The prince of his family. Love reflects in his eyes. A true artist. A prostitute's son who's a bachelor. Only he can protect this town. The friends sit and discuss who this mysterious person is. They soon realize that Vicky ticks all the boxes. Apparently the whole town knew, but his father never told him that his mother was a prostitute. Listening to this Vicky loses control and lashes out at them. He chugs some beer and gets drunk. A drunk Vicky is then seen approaching his father questioning him about his mother. His father gets mad and walks away. The next morning Vicky comes to terms with whatever has happened as the past cannot be changed. He apologizes to his father and makes it up to him. The friends then gather at Vicky's place and come up with a plan to stop Stree. The only way for her to be stopped is if Vicky gets married to her and sleeps with her. That's the only way she'll find peace. But just as they look into each other's eyes, the girl is going to cast a spell on her and Vicky is going to stab her heart with a dagger and cut off her hair. Vicky is hesitant at first but decides to proceed with the plan to save his town. The friends are seen preparing the house for a marriage ceremony that night. He wears a fancy suit and hat and waits for Stree as his friends hide in the other room looking out for him. That night Stree is seen roaming the streets and Jana manages to get out of his shackles. As Stree is about to enter the house, the power goes out and Jana starts attacking the friends. Stree calls out to Vicky and he blindly follows her voice, while the girl casts a spell on Jana. But when they go looking for Vicky it looks like he's missing. Suddenly they get a message from Vicky about his location. Stree has dragged him to the palace, but she hasn't stripped him. He waits in the dungeon and Stree screams every time he tries to move. He thinks that she wants to sleep with him, so a frightened Vicky starts to strip to his boxers. This just angers her even more, so he puts his clothes back on. Stree then comes close to him and looks him in his eyes. As they share a moment, the pretty girl throws the mystical powder over her and renders her powerless. She gives him the dagger and tells him to stab her heart. Just as he's about to do it, he chickens out and realizes that if they do that, they are no better than the people who did this to her in the first place. So she tells him to just cut off her hair, which will leave her powerless. Just as they are about to do it, Stree wakes up and starts choking the girl. Suddenly Vicky comes to the rescue and cuts off her hair and she disappears. They realize that the only way to really stop her is if the city treats her with love and respect, which she never received. Just then we watch as all the men who disappeared that year walk out the palace. The friends proudly take them back home. The next day, all the friends are rewarded with a sum of 10,000 rupees. They then rush to the bus stop where the pretty girl is about to go back to her town. Vicky gives her a flower and she just ends up friendzoning him. They say their goodbyes and she gets on the bus, but Vicky still forgets to ask her name. On the bus ride, we see that the girl has stolen Stree's hair. She attaches it to her own and gains Stree's power. This girl lied to Vicky as she was actually a witch who came after Stree to attain her powers. She then disappears from the bus. The next year, as Stree is about to enter the town, there's a statue of her with the words, "Oh Stree, protect us," so she finally gets the respect she's been craving for. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.